What's up, everybody? Charlie Marlow here once again, doing yet another video on camera because there's a story a lot of people in St. Louis and a lot of Cardinals fans are talking about. You've probably heard this by now. Jim Bowden, the former GM back in the day of the Cincinnati Reds and the Washington Nationals, now works for The Athletic, wrote this article about one thing that each team should do or each team is looking at. So I'll read you what he wrote for the Cardinals. Cardinals, the title is Assessing the Trade and Free Agent Markets. The Cardinals filled their biggest offseason need when they signed catcher Wilson Contreras. Now they are open-minded in looking for ways to improve their team. They're actively pursuing trades and keeping tabs on the free agent market. It is believed the Cardinals are working to acquire a certain player, but want to make sure more specifics don't become public because it would hurt their chances of completing a trade. They're not done making moves. So how about that for intrigue? A certain player. Is this one player a certain player? Is this a type of player? What do you think? A lot of people on YouTube yesterday in the comments brought up this article. I should have talked about this yesterday, but folks were speculating. Could it be, Brian Reynolds we've heard about a lot, but Pablo Lopez. Some people even brought up Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani. It's always fun to speculate. I'm doing the same. The name Shane Bieber was thrown around. And so last night, as I'm thinking about this, I start to do a little research. And by the way, in saying this, I don't know that the Cardinals are going to 100% go after Shane Bieber, but I'm going to make the case right now. So I'm reading this article, and I'm going to say in my mind, in my opinion, this certain player that Jim Bowden is talking about is Shane Bieber. And here's why. There's a lot of reasons, by the way. This isn't me throwing crap at the wall. Now, maybe Shane Bieber will not be traded. Maybe this deal won't happen. But I want to talk about in this video why I think it actually could. And there's a lot of data about how both teams do business showing that a trade between the Indians and the Cardinals for Shane Bieber is not out of the question at all, in my opinion. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but let me bring up some stats and some numbers for you guys. Okay, first of all, Shane Bieber has 2 years left on his contract. Okay, Shane Bieber, we know, great pitcher, #1 starter, won the Cy Young back in 2020. That was the COVID-shortened year. But career in 5 years, 54-26 win-loss, if you care about that type of thing. 3.17 career ERA. Career FIP is 3. Has 831 strikeouts in 703 career innings. He's pitched 200 innings in a season twice, including last year with the Cleveland Guardians when he made 31 starts. Here's the deal. You're probably asking yourself, well, why would the Cleveland, now Guardians, trade Shane Bieber? Here's why. The Cleveland Guardians are cost conscious, aka cheap. They want to save money. And if you think, oh, the Guardians, there's no way they trade Shane Bieber. Well, guess what? I looked this up too. Remember when they traded Trevor Bauer? Now, that was at the trade deadline. But still, it was at the trade deadline when Bauer had a year and a half of control. So essentially, you traded Trevor Bauer for 2 postseasons or a year and a half to a team. Remember, they made that deal. They traded him to the Cincinnati Reds. And look, is that much different? You're basically trading a guy in July of the year, a year and a half of service time, a year and a half of control you have, versus trading Shane Bieber with 2 full years of control left. So they traded Trevor Bauer, remember, the season after he had his best year in the big leagues. 2.21 ERA for Trevor Bauer in 2018. He was an all-star. So what does that mean, or what did that mean? That also meant that Trevor Bauer started making a lot more money, which the Cleveland Indians, now Guardians at the time, they're not a big fan of spending a ton on their players. So what happened was, and I'll read you the salaries for Trevor Bauer. So when Trevor Bauer had that really good season in 2018, Well, the following year, because of arbitration, the Cleveland Indians had to pay him $13 million. Well, they traded him mid-season. They also knew he was going to get another big raise the following year. Now, the Reds ended up paying that, but that was a $17.5 million arbitration or salary. I don't know if they went to arbitration or if they settled, but either way, he made $17.5 million before eventually hitting free agency, where he signed that huge deal with the Dodgers and made $31.3 million the next year. So the reason I bring this up is Trevor Bauer back then was an ace. Now, I don't think at that time he was the same level as Shane Bieber, because Shane Bieber did win a Cy Young, even though it was 2020. And Shane Bieber is a number one ace type pitcher, I think, in everybody's opinion. But there's a very similar salary structure progression happening here, because the Guardians don't like to spend a lot of money. So I was looking up what Shane Bieber is supposed to make in arbitration. Now, a website that does a good job at this, it is MLBTradeRumors.com. I'm going to go to the Guardians. It's still as an Ohio guy, weird to say Guardians, because I grew up with the Cleveland Indians, but I get it. Shane Bieber is projected to make in arbitration $10.7 million coming up in 2023. So let's just say $11 million. All right. Let's look at payrolls. We broke down payrolls yesterday. The Cardinals payroll right now, 2023 payroll projection, $164 million. And then look down, and that's, by the way, that's 15th in baseball. And go down to them Cleveland Guardians, 24th right now in baseball at $93 million. This team does not like to spend money. Here's the deal, though. I think people forget the Guardians were pretty dang good last year. The Guardians won their division, the AL Central. I looked this up yesterday. I believe they had 92 wins. So Cleveland is still a team that's trying to compete. So that plays into this of people probably saying, well, Charlie, why the heck would the Guardians want to trade their best pitcher in Shane Bieber? And by the way, yes, they went 92-70 last year, and they won the AL Central by a ton, won it by 11 games over the White Sox. So when we're doing these trade proposals, or look, we're just talking here, but I don't think this is crazy. Look, the Guardians want a player or players that are cheaper, but the Guardians aren't in rebuild mode. The Guardians could still win the AL Central next year, and they probably want to compete next year. So here's where I think there's actually a good trade partner when you start to mention players with the St. Louis Cardinals. What do you guys think? Tell me if you think I'm wrong here. Am I crazy thinking about Shane Bieber? Is there somebody else you think is the certain player that was brought up by Jim Bowden? Again, please comment, like, subscribe if you're still watching. So hear me out. The Guardians want to win, but they don't want to spend. The Cardinals want to win, and they're willing to spend about double or darn close to it in payroll as Cleveland. So here's the centerpiece of a deal that I think actually makes sense. All right, let's start with Shane Bieber comes to the Cardinals. You have an ace for 2023. You have an ace for 2024. And call me crazy, Shane Bieber also seems like the type of guy, he comes in, he pitches for a year for the Cardinals, he does well, maybe he wants to stick around, and maybe that's your ace for the next 5 to 7 years. That's how the Cardinals like to do business. You bring the guy in first via trade, and then you extend him long term. We've seen that with Matt Holliday. We've seen that with Paul Goldschmidt. We saw that even with Nolan Arenado, who decided not to opt out. Okay, who's the Cardinals going to send back that makes sense? Well, how about this name? Jack Flaherty. And here's why. Jack Flaherty, because he was so injured this past year, if you go to that same website, MLB Trade Rumors, in terms of what his arbitration projection is, I believe it's $5.1 million. Jack Flaherty, $5.1 million projected to make in the year 2023. So think about it like this. Now I'm going to add a couple pieces. We're going to get maybe a little fantasy football, fantasy baseball, a little crazy here, but I don't think it's that crazy. So think about it like this. Cardinals get 2 years of Shane Bieber, but the Cardinals pick up the $11 million salary projected in 2023 for Shane Bieber. The Cardinals send Jack Flaherty, so they're also getting an ace, a guy who can be an ace if he's healthy. Now, he's not in the same realm of Shane Bieber because he hasn't stayed healthy. But my point is, the Guardians are getting a pretty dang good pitcher. Now, just for 1 year, but he's projected to make $5.1 million. So if you look at that as you're trading one good pitcher for another good pitcher, and also from Cleveland's perspective, you're saving about $6 million. Now, clearly, that is not close to a fair trade right there. The Cardinals are going to have to add. They're going to have to add prospects. And remember, Jack Flaherty, let's be real, he's not going to sign with the Cardinals. He's not going to sign with the Cardinals, so if you can trade him now, then he hits free agency. He's probably not going to sign with the Guardians either if he was traded there. But Shane Bieber coming in for 2 years of control, pitches for a year, pitches for half a year. He likes it here. You like him. Then you extend him long term. Remember, the Cardinals have rotation spots to fill in 2024, 4 of them right now. Steven Matz is the only guy that's under control right now. Okay, so that's the centerpiece of this deal. Now I'll get a little, I don't want to say crazy, but remember, the Guardians want to save money. In that same MLB Trade Rumors projections, the Guardians also have a shortstop who's pretty dang good named Ahmed Rosario. Ahmed Rosario is also hitting free agency after the 2023 season. And guess what? His projection in arbitration is $9 million. We know the Guardians don't like to spend money. Now, Rosario is a good player. He's slightly above average, both offensively and defensively. Nobody's saying he's fantastic, but he's a good, solid, starting major league shortstop. He played in, I believe, 140 games at shortstop last year. Here, I'll bring it up right here. Ahmed Rosario is 27 years old. Last year, played 153 games, had 9 triples, 18 stolen bases, 11 homers, hit 283, on base 312, slugged 403, 715 OPS, 106 OPS plus. So slightly above average as a shortstop. Offensively, same defensively, not a liability, but not a great player by any means, but a solid starting major league shortstop who's making $9 million. You can make the case that's kind of a lot of money for a guy who's not well above average, certainly for the Cleveland Guardians who don't like to spend money. Could the Cardinals use a starting shortstop for 2023 who's only under control for 1 year so they can let him walk after 2023? Maybe that's the perfect time then to bring in Mason Wynn as your starting shortstop for 2024 and move Tommy Edman back to second base, and a guy like Brendan Donovan is then your super utility Ben Zobrist type. So again, let's think about the money here though. So the Cardinals are taking on a good player, also an Ahmed Rosario, who's making $9 million. What if the Cardinals sent back Paul DeJong? Now you're saying Paul DeJong, he's not a starting player right now. He's at best a backup player in Major League Baseball, which I agree with until he proves it. Well, guess what? Cardinals could eat that salary. Now, the Guardians are getting a backup player, but the Guardians have some upper tier in the minor leagues middle infielders that potentially can replace Ahmed Rosario. That's what I looked up last night. I don't even know the names, but it seems like they got some guys that could potentially fill that spot. So even if Paul DeJong is a backup for the Guardians, and remember, the Cardinals are going to be eating this salary. So let me just kind of do the math in my head here. So as of right now, the Cardinals are getting Shane Bieber and Ahmed Rosario. So the Guardians, they're shedding $20 million in payroll, but they're getting back Jack Flaherty, who's going to make about $5.1 million. And the Cardinals are going to give them Paul DeJong, but the Cardinals are going to eat the majority of that salary, which they'll have to do regardless. Remember, Paul DeJong's making about $9 million with a $2 million buyout. So if you look at that right there, if the Cardinals, if they're already going to have to pay Paul DeJong, they're bringing on essentially, in this deal right now, about $15 million in excess salary because you're bringing on Bieber and Ahmed Rosario. That's about $20 million, and you're trading Jack Flaherty. So for the Cardinals, you're only adding $15 million in payroll. That seems pretty reasonable to me. And for the Guardians, you right now, because look, you're getting Flaherty and you're going to pay him about $5 million, but you're saving $6 million there on Bieber because Bieber's going to make about $11 million. You're saving $9 million on Rosario. There's your $15 million savings. And again, you're getting Paul DeJong, but the Cardinals are eating that salary. So still, though, this is not a fair trade yet because the Cardinals are getting a better pitcher with more control in Shane Bieber. They're getting clearly a better shortstop in Ahmed Rosario than Paul DeJong. The Cardinals are doing the Guardians a favor in taking that salary off their hands, but this is where the prospects come in. And I don't even know who it's going to be. I didn't really dive deep enough into this to know exactly what Cleveland has, what they need, what they want. But you know the Cardinals have a lot of major league outfield depth. And if you just start naming the names of whether it's O'Neill, Carlson, and Nootbaar, if you want to throw in, I don't think a guy like Donovan's going to be traded. But I'm saying more so the Cardinals have so many options. Nolan Gorman could play some corner outfield, DH, Juan Yepez, you have Alec Burleson. There's enough names that you throw a solid prospect or major league outfielder in there if that's what the Guardians are looking for. And I don't know that they are. But also you can look at some of your pitching prospects in the minor leagues, and you don't want to get rid of somebody like a Tink Hence. You don't want to get rid of somebody like a Gordon Graceffo. But if it's a Michael McGreevy, just names like that, if you start to add a prospect or two, I think you're getting close to a fair deal. What do you guys think? Am I crazy? I don't think I am. I'm not saying it's going to happen. But when you look at the way that the Cleveland franchise does business, they usually don't sign these guys long term. They paid Jose Ramirez. They're not going to pay a lot of guys. And again, they let Trevor Bauer walk in a similar situation, albeit at the trade deadline. So them trading Trevor Bauer and giving away the last year and a half of his control, I don't think that's too crazy comparing that to giving away or trading away 2 years of Shane Bieber at the final 2 years before he hits free agency. What do you guys think? And again, you know, the Ahmed Rosario thing is interesting because he does fit a need for the Cardinals, especially for 2023. You got to think Mason Wynn is ready to go in 2024. And you're helping out the Guardians by taking that salary away. The Cardinals are also able to move on from Paul DeJong. Again, you're going to have to eat that salary. And I don't want to say Paul DeJong is just a throw-in, but he's a backup player right now in Major League Baseball until he proves himself otherwise. So clearly after that, the Cardinals are going to have to give up some pretty good prospects, one or two, I think, to make this deal happen. But what do you guys think? Remember, look, Jack Flaherty still has a lot of value. I know he doesn't have Shane Bieber's value, but I think Jack Flaherty is going to have a really good season in his final year, his walk year before he hits free agency. And I think this also allows Cleveland to do a soft rebuild. That's not even a fair way to characterize it because they won the division last year. They're getting Flaherty. They're going to get some prospects. If they have guys ready at shortstop to replace Ahmed Rosario, they don't want to pay Ahmed Rosario $9 million anyway. They're probably not going to sign Ahmed Rosario past 2023. This seems like a pretty good and fair deal to me. Now, clearly the other prospects are going to have to be the big part of this package. I don't know exactly what the value is there, what's fair, but I think this is pretty reasonable. And so just when you see it, if I title this certain player, Shane Bieber for Jack Flaherty, you might right off the bat think, that's kind of crazy. But hopefully the way I've explained this, because I'm not just throwing stuff off the wall. I did think about all this, and I did a lot of kind of research last night just looking into all these different guys. And I think this is a trade that could happen because the Cardinals need an ace. And look, Pablo Lopez, I'm a fan of Pablo Lopez, but man, Shane Bieber, if that's your next ace, you went from Chris Carpenter to Adam Wainwright, you're passing the torch. The Cardinals have a lot of really good, solid pitchers right now. They don't have an ace. Jack Flaherty could be an ace this year, but I don't think he's staying long term. You need that ace pitcher for the next 5-6 years, and I think Shane Bieber could be that guy for the Cardinals. This is the way the Cardinals like to do business. You trade for the guy with a year or two of control. You bring him in. Hopefully he loves St. Louis. You love him. And you work out a deal with this guy before he hits free agency. That's the way the Cardinals do business. And one more thing. I did look this up. Look, Shane Bieber, let's say he makes $11 million this year. And whatever he makes next year. Let's just say it's similar to Trevor Bauer when he was in his final year of arbitration. Let's say $17, $18 million. Whatever it is. Okay, well, Shane Bieber's going to make what? $25, $30 million a year in free agency. You'd have to think starting in the 2025 season. That's also the year that Paul Goldschmidt comes off the books making $26 million. Now, I think there's a very good chance Paul Goldschmidt stays with the Cardinals. Maybe he doesn't get that money, but my point is when Shane Bieber eventually hits free agency, that's a time where even more money's coming off the books for the Cardinals with Paul Goldschmidt's deal expiring right there. What do you guys think? Am I nuts? Am I crazy? What do you think of Shane Bieber? Who's the certain player that Jim Bowden's talking about? Is it Shohei Ohtani? Is it Pablo Lopez? Is that not a sexy enough name? Is it Brian Reynolds? To me, Shane Bieber would be the best possible outcome because the Cardinals need an ace for 23, for 24, and for the future, and he could be that guy, and the Guardians are a franchise that do deals like this. So I think it's a pretty reasonable thing to at least discuss. I'm not saying it's going to happen. What do you guys think? If you're still watching now, I appreciate it. Please comment, the old like button, subscribe if you haven't. I'm going to actually do a quick outro. I'm not going to talk for 7 more minutes as I try to say goodbye. I'm just going to say goodbye. Shane Bieber and Ahmed Rosario for Jack Flaherty, Paul DeYoung, and a couple of Cardinals prospects. John Mozeliak, Bill DeWitt Jr., get the deal done for this certain player. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See ya. Peace.